Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for another interview of Magnify Our Impact. And today I'm really privileged to be with Michael Toxvaerd. And Michael is I think it's very fair to say he's a very successful serial entrepreneur. He also has very close links with regards to very high level education and did very well in his MBA and his degree with regards to his links with Cranfield University. So not only is he a very successful businessman in his own right and investor, he sits on a number of boards. He also, from an academic perspective, is very bright. And talking to Michael previously, of course, it's really courageous to me from a social and personal perspective to tell us a little bit, Michael, if you will, about your background, but also what yourself and your wife and your children chose to do to travel the world, which is a real passion of mine. And I can't even imagine what that's given your kids as a foundation for life. Somebody said to me once, school's okay, but you can't beat a good education. So it must be a great education for your children. And I'd love to hear about the impact that you feel that that's made to yourself, your wife, and the kids as well. But you've had an amazing career so far, it's clear. And there's so much that I'm very much looking forward to sharing today. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
And so, Michael, it would be great to start with, of course, to just give us a few minutes about your background, where you've come from and where you are today.
Yeah. So I'm Danish and started my career in Denmark. First, straight out of school, I didn't go to uni to start with, but I was lucky enough to join a management program for the biggest company in Denmark, AP Møller Mærsk, which is a global education. At the age of 19, in my second year, I was sent to Australia, my little suitcase and very little experience. I hardly even spoke fluent English by then, and immediately was put into a seat with responsibility as a deputy manager for a shipping line with 300 million Australian dollar revenue. And so it was learning by doing from the beginning, both in life and also in business. And a few years after that, having traveled, coming back to Denmark, I wanted to, I guess, have even more responsibilities. So I moved out of big business and into smaller business. And within 3 years, I was lucky enough to then run my first business at the age of 26 with about 100 staff. It was in electronics, telecoms in Scandinavia, which was flying in the late 90s. And that business, through a couple of acquisitions and astronomical growth, because we were in the right place at the right time, we managed to grow that business almost tenfold in 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Went through a crisis in 2001, had to close down factories, outsource to Eastern European countries to sort of become profitable again, and then ended up turning it around, sold the business to another Danish company. And after that, at the age of, I guess, 29, I decided to have some time for myself. I moved to the UK to do an MBA at Cranfield and loved it, both the UK actually and also my education. At the end of it, I met my now wife, and she had done an MBA at Cranfield the year before. And she basically, together we set up a business called Nutrahealth PLC, which was a public company that we started straight off the bat. And within 5 years, we bought 7 companies into this group, which became the 3rd biggest nutrition business in the UK.
Wow.
Listed AIM business. And we then sold that in 2009 to an Indian pharmaceutical listed in Mumbai. And after that, that was my sort of, the end, I would actually say, probably of my linear sort of entrepreneurial hands-on career. And from then on, I was always fascinated by how public markets worked, how private equity worked, how venture capital worked. And I started moving into that space more. And so both Sarah, my wife, and I started investing then. And I did it professionally, as you know, in private equity for a few years, buying and selling growing companies. And we also started building our own personal portfolio of businesses. And that is what we've done since, pretty much. And we've invested in, bought and sold a bunch of companies, and currently have 8 or 9 investments. And that has been the overall journey, I guess.
It's quite a journey. What strikes me as you talk through your background briefly there, Michael, is the speed at which you've managed to magnify things and create impact for people inside the businesses and have that success. I'd love to explore that more. Before I ask you to kindly answer some questions about how do you create that in a short space of time, I'm really interested in, where do you feel this entrepreneurial spirit has come from in you? In other words, when you were young, did you have aspirations when you were a kid, or was there a moment when you were 19 and thought, I can do this? Or what really inspired you or started you understanding at such a young age that you can be thrown into environments like that and succeed?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to have to go back to probably even earlier years. I come from a small village in Denmark, a few hundred people, lots of fields, lots of lots of rural upbringing, which was safe, but also I saw my parents struggle through. Me and my brother, my dad would he would get up super early in the morning and work till he'd be home at 5 or 6, and he would do that what seemed like forever. We would see him for an hour, then he would go across the road where there was a garage, and he would fix up cars all night, because that was the only way in which he could sort of add a little bit extra to our life. And I saw basically my mom would then go to work at 4 in the afternoon, so they would hardly ever see each other. She would work night shifts, evening shifts and night shifts. And there was a point quite early on where I thought to myself, actually, I didn't quite understand why there was, disparity, like why some people struggled and others seemingly had an easier time. And I thought to myself, the only way to get freedom to control your own time and your own life would be to find a way to create enough financial freedom to make those choices yourself. And I think that very much comes from my upbringing. And, my parents always taught us that, that anything was possible, and they always allowed us to explore whatever we wanted to explore. So there were no limitations put on us in that way. But I just felt that the route that I saw them go through was not what I wanted for myself. I wanted to be more in control, I guess, of my own path.
And looking back then to that really resonates in that, I've learned a little bit in my life that through challenge and difficulty, and you grow, don't you? You develop greatly. And so when you first had that opportunity to go out in the world and start working at the level at which you did, you obviously had a lot of confidence early on, because to be able to create the opportunities that you did in these large organizations, you obviously had a great mind, but also a lot of confidence in your own sense of self-belief. What do you feel when you look back at your career now so far? What do you feel are the 3 things for you that have made you most successful?
Another thing I learned was that, when you come from sort of humble beginnings, every step you take through life is a new beginning almost, because you particularly when you move to a bigger city and you get your first big job working with people who have very different backgrounds, and you have to relearn all the time. And I learned very quickly, actually, that the best way of propelling yourself and propelling your career was by constantly surrounding yourself with really, really smart people.
Yes.
And always aspire to be the dumbest person in the room. But, and then hope they don't find you out too quickly. I think that is something that I really strongly believe in. It's what I have done as a private equity investor, is looking for the smartest people.
Yes.
It's what I've done when I've been building companies. It's surrounding myself, hiring whatever it takes, the smartest people, etc. So that is definitely one element. I think another element is, it comes back to this constant reinvention as you grow. And I've got a constant desire to learn and to grow. And it requires an element of boldness, because, confidence sometimes is linked to comfort, in that it's easier to be confident when you are in an environment that you feel comfortable with, that
yes.
you know, to actually be able to expand that confidence when you enter into a new place takes time. And but when you've done it enough times, there is some comfort in knowing that actually I'm stepping into something new. This is a little bit scary. There are lots of unknowns, but from previous experience, I know we're probably on balance going to be fine. And having that ability, I think, is super important in creating sustainable success. Then I think perhaps the last element would be, I think I'm been lucky enough to have an inherent ability to mix dreaming and strategizing well. And I think if you can build a dream that you can actually articulate to those smart people around you,
yes,
that is a really important way for everybody to stay aligned and motivated. And I think business should always be a little bit about dreaming and not just about being profitable or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's those are probably the 3 things I would pick out.
Yeah, no, that's really valuable. And I guess I use a lot of different words for this, but you summed it up really well in that, dreaming and strategizing. I suppose those are 2 sides of the coin, and to bring them together is so powerful, isn't it? And, it's like achievement and fulfillment, or, being a child and an adult all at the same time and combining both, whatever we want to call it. It's absolutely to be able to take your emotions and your logic and channel those and make it clear to people and inspire them at the same time. That's really powerful. So, Michael, you've obviously worked with a huge amount of teams in lots of different ways, sometimes in it, sometimes observing it and helping and supporting other senior people and all sorts of different cultures you've been involved in business and in life. There's a number of people, I'm sure, watching this and or listening to this that are in lots of different places within the business world and the non-for-profit world. Some people, I'm sure, are listening to this that have inherited a team where they don't think the culture's working very well right now, or they were doing fantastic before we're now in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. They were doing great a year ago, and now not so great, and they need to get back to greatness again. So in all your experience in working inside and supporting and leading teams, what are the most important things to be aware of when you're building and developing a culture?
Oh, wow. I think there are, a business really, sometimes we can look at it and we can say, and think that a business is this standalone thing, but really it isn't. A business is a bunch of people deciding to come together every morning to build something together. That is all it is. It's just a bunch of people. So business in that respect is no different from life. I think inherently there is one thing that is important to all humans. I see it in my children. I see it in myself. Certainly in my relationship, is that we all just want to be heard. We all want to have a voice. We all want to, see the work we do have value. We want to have a level of autonomy. So I think, and we want to work towards this common goal, which, is what community is. It's what a business is. And I think that's part of the deep set tribal element in us all, the main key. And it comes back to a little bit about being able to have a vision, which is another word for a dream, and then being able to articulate it and allow people to grow with it and feel that they are all part of that same journey. And I think that is key. I think in this particular situation, during this particular pandemic, to achieve that requires a different level sometimes of boldness, because there is so much change and so much uncertainty. We talk about you can't always control what happens to you, but you can control how you deal with it. And I think that's really, really key, to be bold enough to articulate and recognize that things are different, and bring people with you. Let them have their voice. Let them be part of that journey. If you can achieve that, I think you can inspire anyone, and you can inspire any team, because I think those are sort of fundamental human, emotions.
That's really valuable to me, because sometimes I suppose a lot of us fall into this trap that I see it as something external to our tribal nature, a business or my community, we compartmentalize, don't we? And I say, this is my homeland, and these are my friends, this is the community, and over here there's businesses. But what's interesting to me, very interesting, is that kind of gives us much more freedom to think about how we develop a team and how we grow a business. If you have that attitude that you've shared, which is, this is a group of people that are people and that want to create something and have a common goal and a common belief and a vision, and want to do it. It's no different to life, which makes a lot of us, I guess, feel much more comfortable, because sometimes I think, particularly when you're young, the guys who are 21 or 25, and now there's 50,000 companies out there, and they don't know which, or charities and social enterprises and community interest companies, and they're like, wow, because our grandparents had, like you spoke about, your parents and then our grandparents, and they had choice of 5 things. Now we have 50,000 things. To just understand who we are as a personality and say, okay, this is just part of my life, is really valuable, and takes away some of the pressure, definitely, for us to perform and fit in. Yeah. Very interested in your view of what do you feel are the biggest challenges right now, and how do we either overcome that challenge or manage it best?
It's easy to talk about the pandemic because it is there, it's right now,
Yes.
certainly. But I think we've got to perhaps take a step back and look at even the world that we were in before that. We are, I think I'm of a generation that has only halfway through my life realized that actually we're living in a world with scarce and finite resource. And I think, we've seen that my generation and our children's generation are starting to take a different kind of responsibility for that. And I think that, is something that has been very much in every, top of everybody's mind before this pandemic, about the environment, about the impact that we have. I certainly see it in my 4 children, and how vocal they are about the impact of pretty much every decision that we make as a family, whether it's the car we buy, the food we eat,
yes,
the way we travel.
Yes.
So I think, that is, and I think it is very probably not unfair to link some of those environmental issues to how a pandemic like this comes about.
No, absolutely.
So I think that whole our wider ecosystem is and our natural world is by far, to my mind, the biggest and most pressing issue we've got, and to solve that, I think is fascinating dilemma for our generation, and a fascinating time to be alive, to do whatever we can to push that in the right direction.
When you look at the next generation, what do you feel from a platform perspective? I know that we've created all these different platforms now. We have charities, we have social enterprises, we have community interest companies, we have conglomerates of companies traditional companies coming together. We have all sorts of different forums. Is there you've invested in so many different platforms and ways in which we work. What advice do you have, or what do you see, Michael, in the future of how we are going to live and work? And can you give the youngsters listening to this some advice as to, do they start their own business? Does it depend on our personalities? Are we going to end up with 1,000 big companies and that's it? Are we going to end up with 1 million small companies? What's your view as far as is there a wrong or right platform for the future to help the environment and the way that we live?
Oh, that's a whole bunch of questions there, isn't it?
I asked about eight questions in one. So best of luck.
So I think if we start at talking about commerce, I think is I'm a huge fan of particular profiteering social enterprise and impact investing. I think is something that I'm going to spend a whole lot of time on over the next decade.
Yes.
And the reason for that is, my sense is that enterprise in itself, in order for an enterprise to be aligned with the current economic system we've got, means that there has to be an objective of profits and being able to reinvest that profit in more, hopefully more good. So fundamentally, I believe that in the economic system we have now, that is quite a fundamental piece. And that means that doesn't mean that I don't think charity is amazing and that the efforts that
sure.
philanthropy is super important as well. But I just believe in order to create sustainable impact.
Yes.
And finding ways to do good and still make money is the best way forward. So social enterprise for me is a great crossover, and the same with impact investing. So basically business models that intrinsically do good. So finding a way to grow crops with less water, but still be able to sell them profitably, so you can do more of that. Ways to replace palm oil without increasing the price of products, etc. Just as examples, there are so many. You can talk about you can talk about food change and all of this. So that's quite fundamental to me, is that I think spending more time and investing more in business lines and technologies that are true impact driven, I think is something investors need to spend a lot more time on. This whole idea that actually impact investing means lower returns is a fallacy, and it might have belonged to a different decade or century, but certainly that isn't the case from what I see.
Yes.
I think the other side of the question, which is more about the next generation, I think, when you think about your life, when you think about your career and what to do, I think it is much more important that you start in a different place and you ask yourself about what kind of life do you wish to have, and then reverse engineer the life you wish to have when you make decisions on what you do. I think in certain parts of the world, what you do has become too big a part of how you identify who you are. And that's, I don't think that's particularly healthy. I think start with the unit of you, and then work backwards to what do you enjoy? What kind of life do you want to live? And then work backwards, because a career is not one thing. I've had 1,000 careers in my short life already. And being and seeing that as a journey to basically get to the life you want. Career is a tool. It is not an end goal. So that is the best advice I can give, is spend your time on your life and then work out what career fits that path.
Yeah, that's really valuable. And great. As you were saying that, I was thinking about my 18-year-old and my 14-year-old about to become 15. And that's, with all the pressures out there, that's fantastic advice, because you work out who you are and the kind of life you want to live, and then work out the platforms at which you can create that sense of enjoyment, or that quality of life that you, or the kind of life that you want to have, and you're not defined by a particular platform.
I had a discussion with an employee in one of the businesses we're in, and she said to me, I'm really struggling to figure out what my 3-year goal should be. I've been asked by my bosses, what is your 3-year goal? What is, what's it?
Yes.
And she said, I'm so struggling to define it, and, where even to start. And I just said back to her, I said, look, talk to me about what kind of life do you see for yourself in 3 years? And as soon as we started talking about that, all of it fell into place. Because he's like, just thinking about, have maybe family, maybe, what? What was that? How does that impact the decisions you make on your everyday work life now, today, to get to that? And I think, that probably sums it up for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you took my 8 questions, you gave me 2 really valuable answers.
I'm sorry, I don't know how many of those
it's
missed,
perfect.
we can get back to that.
You nailed it. So I was just going to ask you, because there's lots of ladies and gentlemen that I trust that are listening to this that are looking to raise funds and are looking to create an impact in the world. And, my ethos and my value system says that money needs to be lower down on our list. And there's other things, of course, that are more important. Having said that, it is a factor and it is a piece at which allows us, and it's a valuable commodity or a resource or an energy at which we can create change in the world. So can you just give us an idea of what's your psychology around funds and money, and how should we look at that in our lives? In other words, what do you see money is, and how do you feel or think about money and funds? I know it's a big question.
For me, money was very early on aligned with freedom of choice.
Right.
That's personal money, but I certainly feel that after having achieved a level of freedom from that path, it is perhaps easier to talk about the value of time and the value of other things once you've achieved that freedom. But to get to it, to get to that point is, a lot of young entrepreneurs aspire to get that level of freedom, and I guess that's also a motivator for a lot of people early on. And capital and access to capital and raising funds, particularly for certain business models, is an incredible important tool, as you said, for to free up the business to be allowed to reach its dreams and goals and visions. My advice would be, if you're a young entrepreneur and you want to start your own business, it is incredibly important to firstly understand that none of it happens overnight. It's a long journey. The average startup that succeeds is in it for a minimum a decade. So the objective must never really just be a financial success. There has to be deeper there has to be passion, and it's got to be sustainable. The difference often between the entrepreneurs we see succeeding and the ones that struggle too is a lot about tenacity, staying power, digging deep when it hurts, because every business is going to go through one hurt or another. And if you don't have the true underlying desire and dream of bringing something to life, it was just of convenience for money, then it won't last.
No.
In those moments when it's painful, that's when you're going to have the ability to remember why you did this, remember why this matters, remember why people come to work every day to realize this dream with you, and be able to continuously, even in those moments, articulate it and put the same passion behind it when things are not as good as they are when things are flying. I think that's the closest I'm going to get, Craig, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, because I think that goes across anything that we do, doesn't it? Whether you're building a sports team, a charity, a social enterprise, a community company, it's a similar thing, right? If you're looking to grow anything.
Yeah.
You mentioned this earlier, and for me, it's tremendously important. For me, definitely in the top 3 most important things in my life is who we spend our time with is vital. Are there 2 or 3 people in your life that have been most inspirational to you and helped you the most? And if so, what are the key learnings from those 2 or 3 people?
Yeah, so see, one of the reasons why I spend probably a disproportionate amount of time advising and mentoring and also investing in young entrepreneurs is that actually I never really had anyone. I was on a path where where I came from, there wasn't really much sort of entrepreneurial spirit. There wasn't. So I aspired and moved on, and so I think where I've been incredibly lucky actually is that I found a life partner, Sarah, who is as passionate about business as I am, is as passionate about young entrepreneurs as I am, as he's super passionate about small business and small business impact on community. And so having her to bounce everything off, having her to, she's, I think, by far the most important person in terms of me staying true to my path, both both in business and in life, thankfully. But before that, quite genuinely, I always aspired and tried to find, the shortcut path, which is often somebody who can teach you to walk around the holes rather than jump into them and then find a way to climb out of them again. But that wasn't really to be. So that would have to be my answer. I think for people I don't know, if we talk about more in sort of global business, it's interesting because you won't be surprised by me saying, from what I've said about dreaming and staying true to your path, that people like certainly Steve Jobs and Elon Musk are right there because of their ability to articulate and drive towards a vision. Now, from a human level and even a managerial level, I don't think there is much alignment with my own personal values, because I wanted and have created a more rounded life. But when you talk about, my passion for business, you talk about my passion for dreaming and strategizing and articulating and bringing people with you, those two people did that to perfection over a lifetime. But it is also a dedicated craft.
Yeah, I really get that. And finally, this is I've asked you a few tough questions, I trust, but this, I think, is the impossible question that I'm sure you're going to be able to answer. If there was one piece of advice, the most important thing when you're looking at staying true to a vision and I guess living the life that you want to live, what do you feel is the most important value?
It is, and this, I know it's a bit of perhaps becoming a bit of a cliche, but it is so absolutely true that whilst I grew up having a desire to create wealth, to get freedom, I soon realized, certainly in my early adult life, that actually time is a hell of a lot more valuable than money.
Yes.
And it has driven every decision I have made in the last 15 to 17 years, is, money comes and goes. It's a great tool. You can't take it with you. You can leverage it. But one thing is certain, and that is that time just goes. It goes and it does not come back. So it is much, much more important to me to pass the advice of make sure that in every decision you make, that the opportunity cost of time is important in that equation. Look, I worked 70-hour weeks to build my expertise in commerce for years on end. And I wouldn't do it any differently had I realized what I now see in time, because at that time, the opportunity cost was low. I spent that time to be able to free up time later on. And that's what I would have done that again. now, and this goes back to, the point you were saying about, my wife and I took our 4 kids out of school in 2016 and traveled the world for a year first. And then we did 2 more years living in a ski resort to have a different perspective, to have a different life. And the reason that was possible, number one, obviously, the financial independence, for sure. But the other reason is that once that was achieved for us, you can continue to just build to a bigger and bigger pile, or you can consider, what is the opportunity cost of that? And what we felt was that, to stop, take stock, travel, see the world through our children's eyes, see the world for, in a more innocent and naive way almost,
yes,
was the most valuable way we could spend time then. And it is the best thing we ever did, unsurprisingly. But it all comes down to that equation of time. It is so important to get that balance right, because that's where deep felt joy and fulfillment comes from.
Yeah. It's been so valuable talking to you. Thank you so much. Been great talking to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your very insightful questions. They are not easy to answer in one sentence.
Oh, bless you. Well, thank you so much.